lit. Roll up to the party, roll up to the party. Roll up to the party, roll up to the...
Good morning and welcome back to the One Celtic Fans View this morning. It is Friday morning. Today we'll hear from Brendan Rodgers to hear how the squad is faring for the weekend, and no doubt we'll get asked about the fantastic performance against RB Leipzig during the week. Absolutely fantastic win that puts us on a nice number of points. A number of points that I don't think anyone at Celtic realistically were looking to be at this stage in the Champions League. I think that the upcoming games, the next 3 games, are the ones that I had personally, that I thought that those were the ones that we would be able to pick up the points and secure our place in that mid-table. And as it stands just now, Celtic have got a slim chance of getting into the top 8 and automatic qualification for the last 16 of the Champions League. But today it is all about, and this weekend, it's back to league business. Yeah, it's back to league business. Back to Celtic being top of the league. Looking down on, well, everyone really, apart from Aberdeen. Aberdeen are on the same points as Celtic. Celtic will be trying their utmost to make sure that they can maintain that gap at the top of the league when it comes to goal difference. Yes, it's only goal difference. Celtic are on 26 goals and Aberdeen are on 11. It's fantastic for Scottish football that Aberdeen are in such a lofty position, because let's face it, we do need some competition, and it's always good when team gets up there, and not enough credit is given to the teams. And especially, I mean, you can go back over the last 15 years and some people bemoan the fact that Celtic didn't win trebles during the time where a certain team wasn't in the league. Now, there was a lot more teams won cups then, there was a bit more teams came second, and it was edging back to being a bit more competitive. Now, financially, there's a massive gap in Scottish football, and that's the gap that will not be bridged anytime soon, or at all, if that. I don't think any team now, I mean, Celtic are turning into the one of the elite clubs when it comes to finances and profits. It has to be said. But we have to deal with what you can only play the teams that you've got in your league at the end of the day. Anyway, and talking about teams at the end of the day, there's one player that is doing fantastically well, and I'll get to the point with the transfer story, the new contract story. Yes, there's a player's agent is in town to talk about a new contract for a Celtic player. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But there is a player at Celtic who is vastly improved since his arrival. And to think about it, he only arrived at Celtic this year, this calendar year. He only arrived at Celtic. And people are saying that the transformation of Kuhn has been phenomenal. Well, I think Brendan Rodgers and the backroom staff had hoped that this was the player that we were getting in Nikolas Kuhn. When he came to Celtic, Nikolas Kuhn was unwell. He did lose a stone in weight, and it took him a while to get that weight back on. He's not one of the biggest, bulkiest guys, so a stone in weight at his weight is a lot, and it affected his performance on the pitch. We're now seeing Nikolas Kuhn in full flow. Yep, in full flow, in full. He's just fantastic, isn't he? And to the German reporter from Sky that alleged that their teams were looking at Nikolas Kuhn for a region of around about €10 million, £9 million. I think that we can send them homewards to think again, since they're coming from south of the border. And there's absolutely no chance that Nikolas Kuhn will be sold for £10 million. Absolutely not a chance. And I don't think he'll be sold in the next transfer window or the next summer. Celtic will do their utmost to keep hold of as many players as we can, especially since they're in contract talks with one of the first team stars at the moment to extend his contract. Anyway, tell me what you think about Nikolas Kuhn in the comments. The fact that Nikolas Kuhn started his career off back in 2009, and he actually played with St. Pauli Youth. That's an interesting fact that you might have not known. He went to Hanover, he went to RB Leipzig in under 17s, and then he went to Ajax ultimately, and went to Ajax, and then he was sold to FC Bayern. Yes, he was sold to them, and then he ended up at Rapid Vienna. Yep, he did end up at Rapid Vienna, and they didn't spend the money that Ajax did. But anyway, it is what it is. He's with Celtic now. You could say he was a bit of a journeyman through his sort of youth. And the German media said, Nico who? Who is he? Well, the German media know all about him now, and I think that Nikolas Kuhn will be banging on the door to get a first-team place in the national team in 2 years' time. Mark my words with it. I think that the player is that good, and the Germans, once he gets it'll more than likely happen when he gets a move away from Celtic, unless Celtic can keep a hold of him for a couple of years, and he does it consistently in the Champions League. If he starts setting the Champions League on fire, you'll expect a knock on the door from the German national team. Anyway, enough about Nikolas Kuhn. There is some other Celtic news kicking around this morning. One of them, Celtic are close to agreeing a new contract with the player. Brentford see Celtic's 25 million rated Nikolas Kuhn as here we go. It started already. Celtic now rates Nikolas Kuhn at 25 million. It seems to have grown since just the Champions League game, but it is what it is. And Brentford are seeing him as a replacement for one of those players, allegedly coming from noises down south. Now, it has been said that obviously this German reporter said that there have been inquiries. If Celtic go on to sell Nico, how much does Rapid Vienna have a sell-on clause? I hope they don't have any as a sell-on clause, because that would see a £22 million profit return and on the player, which would be an absolutely fantastic. And is there a ceiling? There's a question for you. Is there a ceiling of what a Celtic player can be sold for? We know that he's on a lengthy contract, but is there a ceiling that a Celtic player could be sold for? Because we sold Virgil van Dijk a few years ago, and about 2 seasons after leaving Celtic, he sold for around about 75 million. So are Celtic underpricing players because of the Scottish League, or is it the valuation of what they've actually achieved? I mean, Matt O'Reilly, he only really achieved for 1 season at Celtic, and his stock, well, went through the roof when he played in the Champions League. What would happen to players' valuations if we were to continually try and keep this squad of players together and keep them in the Champions League, get this team and keep it in the Champions League and perform, not just to stay in it, but to maybe even get to the last 16 on a continual basis for a couple of years? What would that do to the squad valuation? Tell me what you think in the comment section, because I think that's an interesting question. I mean, we sold Jota for 25 million, we sold Kieran Tierney for 25 million, we sold Matt O'Reilly for 25 million. Is there a limit? And do you think that Celtic should ask for more? Because let's face it, if he goes to one of these teams, he's going to more than triple his wages, and anyway, somebody will only pay what they want to pay for the player. And other Celtic news, well, where is it? It's let's get to the interesting part. Gustav Lagerbielke admits he's frustrated after failing to start a single league game for the club that he's on loan with. I feel sorry for Gustav. He wanted to go to Italy, and he didn't get to Italy. And I think that we should have sold him when we did. And why we've loaned the player out, I mean, I don't think he's ever going to get back to Celtic and get into the first team. You do feel sorry for Gustav, because he's a nice lad. And he scored a header in the Champions League last season when, a lot of people didn't fancy a lot of the players at Celtic in the defence because we were having a crisis for half the season in the defence. Anyway, let's get to the big story of the day. Representatives arrived in Glasgow yesterday, and they're on the brink of signing a new contract for the one and only Alistair Johnston. Yes, Alistair Johnston's representatives are in Glasgow. The Canadian defender is one of the first choices in any team on a weekly basis. Then his representatives are in to tie down Alistair Johnston, who is 26-year-old, who's taken his game to a new level under Brendan Rodgers, I think. And he's one of those players that people have been saying that he's a potential future captain for Celtic. Now, if he signs a new contract, he is under his current contract until 2027. And the management at Celtic and the backroom staff and the men upstairs want to give him a new contract to extend it. Brendan Rodgers is building a team of players that are here for 5-year contracts. That tells me that Brendan Rodgers may want to stay beyond his own contract that only has an hour. I'm thinking about when she's going to the dentist. Apologies, I'm not cutting that out because it's YouTube and this is real stuff, do you know what I mean? And he does only have a year and a half left on his contract, Brendan Rodgers, but he's amassing a team and he's building a team that were far outlive that 1.5 years that Brendan Rodgers does have left. So, with that being said, the speculation and the talk over the next 6 months will turn around to, will Brendan Rodgers extend his own contract? Will Celtic try and protect their own asset? Celtic did get 10 million for Brendan Rodgers when he went to Leicester, and the last time around they got £3.5 million when Ange Postecoglou decided to leave, even though he was only on a year rolling contract. Brendan Rodgers doesn't want to leave Celtic. He wants to achieve something that he thinks that he needs to put right. And I think he's back in a fantastic place. He's back at a team that he loves, and the fans love him again. There's a lot of fans that didn't want him back, but where are they just now? They're not bemoaning the type of football we're playing. We're doing fantastically well in the Champions League for the first time in a long, long time. So the question come definitely this summer. I mean, I would even start asking the question just now if I was in the media. It's, Brendan, you're extending contracts for players. Is there any chance of you extending your contract since you've only got a year and a half left on that contract? It is a viable question to be asked by the Celtic media, and I think that it's one that should be getting asked in the upcoming weeks as we do get closer to the period when Greg Taylor can talk to anyone. Then it's enough about Greg Taylor, and we'll see what Brendan Rodgers and the backroom staff does with that. It's interesting that they are trying to get Alistair Johnston tied down for that new contract, and that his representatives are in town. Both parties hope to finalise the paperwork quickly, and we'll see the club. It will be one of the club's biggest assets. He is one of the club's biggest assets, and he'll be tied down on lucrative terms. I wonder what those lucrative terms will be, because it seems that Greg Taylor's asking for 24, allegedly. I don't have any confirmed knowledge about this, but it was suggested on the live last night that Greg Taylor's asking for 24 grand a week. If the player at the other side of the park in the same line of defence as him gets more than him, I mean, can you compare Greg Taylor to Alistair Johnston? I mean, who's the better player? Tell me in the comment section. Greg Taylor, or, I mean, that's usually one that we would ask for in the poll when we do the lives. Who do you think is the better player, Greg Taylor or Alistair Johnston? A lot of people go Alistair Johnston. I mean, if we can get someone with the same fighting determination as him, people will say, well, Greg Taylor's kind of got that. Yes, they are. They're similar, but I just don't know what it is. I don't know why Celtic don't want to get Greg Taylor tied down. They've maybe offered him something, but Greg Taylor, he's a Scotland left back. He's an international player, just like Alistair Johnston. So, you know, what's the difference? As he gets ready to enter the final 6 months of his contract, Taylor's been influential, both on and off the park. He's never reached the heights and the levels that Kieran Tierney did. And when Kieran Tierney left in 2019, Greg Taylor was brought in as his direct replacement. He's one of the guys that mouth off in the dressing room. He's one of the guys who steps up when needs to be. He's one of the guys that get the club. But his future does hang in the balance. But if Celtic can put out the good news story that they've tied up Alistair Johnston until 2030, God, 2030, or even 2029 or 2028 or something, God, we're all getting old, aren't we? That was like Back to the Future stuff, like years away when you were wee, wasn't it? Anyway, we're digressing. Tell me what you think about that Alistair Johnston story. Do you think it's a great deal? I think it's fantastic personally, and it will be all eyes on Brendan this afternoon, and I wonder who'll get wheeled out. I wonder if it'll be Alistair Johnston by any chance that will get wheeled out to do the talking to the press this afternoon. That could be a little yes, what's happening in the background if it is Alistair Johnston. It may be the skipper. The skipper might be dragged out to talk to the media this afternoon. I don't think it'll be Greg Taylor. Anyway, and then we'll listen to what the manager has to say. We'll do a live shortly after the Celtic put out theirs, and I think we'll just there won't be a late live on Friday night because there's never anybody about to watch it really. Anyway, have an absolutely fantastic day, Celtic fans, wherever you are, all around the world, and just remember that we are top of the table. And that's the Amazon page. If you haven't clicked on the Amazon link, please do. If you haven't clicked on that, please do. But anyway, have an absolutely fantastic day to all the Celtic fans all around the world. Let's see if we can click the right button today.
lit. Roll up to the party, roll up to the party. Roll up to the